The snow fell in thick, lazy spirals that morning, wrapping the old biker clubhouse in a silence so heavy it almost felt sacred. Inside, a group of men sat around a fire, their leather vests cracked and faded, the bold insignia, Hell's Angels, barely visible beneath years of smoke and regret. It was Christmas Day, but no one spoke the word. Christmas had long ago stopped meaning anything to them. For the 7th year in a row, no one's family came. No wives. No children. No one waiting at home. Just the same group of broken men, brothers by choice, outcasts by consequence, nursing cheap whiskey and pretending the silence didn't hurt. That was when a soft knock echoed through the heavy wooden door. 3 short taps. Then another. It was the sound of something fragile and human cutting through the fortress of loneliness they'd built around themselves. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the beauty of unexpected miracles, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Echoes of Kindness. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them most. The man who rose to open the door was their leader, Ray Steele Carson. Once the terror of the highways, now just a shadow in his late 40s. His beard was thick and silvered, and his eyes, though fierce, carried a fatigue that went beyond the physical. He opened the door half expecting trouble, but what he saw instead stole the words right out of his mouth. Standing in the cold was a young woman, maybe in her late 20s, clutching a worn-out coat around her small daughter. The little girl, no older than 6, held a tattered teddy bear and looked up at him with eyes so wide and honest they made Steele feel suddenly smaller than he'd ever felt before. "I'm sorry," the woman began, her voice trembling from the cold. "My car broke down about a mile down the road. My phone's dead. We saw the lights here and well, could we please just come in for a bit to warm up?" Steele hesitated. Every instinct in him said no. These men weren't the kind you invited into polite company, and certainly not the kind you brought your child around. But something in that little girl's face, something pure and trusting, tore through his defenses. He stepped aside and motioned them in. Inside, the room stiffened. The other bikers, huge men with scars, tattoos, and years of rage bottled inside, fell silent. The fire crackled louder than any of them spoke. The woman introduced herself as Mara, and her daughter as Lucy. She explained how they'd been driving to her sister's house for Christmas dinner, how she'd been trying to make it through another hard year alone since her husband's death, and how fate, or perhaps something kinder, had led them here. As she talked, the men began to relax, though awkwardly. Someone brought them blankets. Someone else offered coffee. Lucy, innocent and curious, wandered around the clubhouse, staring at the motorcycles lined up like sleeping beasts. "Do you guys ride these?" she asked, her small voice breaking the heavy silence. The men looked at each other, and for the first time that day, someone laughed, a deep, rusty laugh that felt like it had been buried under years of bitterness. "Yeah, sweetheart," one of them said. "These are ours." Lucy's face lit up. "They look like dragons," she said, grinning. Steele felt something shift in the room. It was small, like a spark in cold ashes, but it was there, a flicker of warmth that hadn't been felt in years. As hours passed, the clubhouse transformed. Mara's gentle nature softened the edges of those hard men. She spoke kindly to them, listened when they spoke, and didn't flinch when she heard the stories they rarely told, the losses, the regrets, the roads that led them here. Lucy, with her fearless laughter, brought life back to that place. She played with their patches, asked about their tattoos, and told them she thought they were heroes in disguise. None of them had ever been called heroes before. Steele found himself watching Mara often, noticing the way her hands shook slightly when she held her coffee, the weariness in her eyes that came from too many burdens carried alone. He recognized it because it mirrored his own. That evening, when the snow grew heavier, they realized Mara and Lucy couldn't go anywhere. The roads were blocked. Steele made the decision to let them stay the night. They cleared out one of the back rooms, usually used for storing old bike parts, and set it up with blankets and a heater. Mara thanked them with tears in her eyes, her gratitude raw and real. When Lucy fell asleep, Mara sat by the fire with Steele and the others. The air grew quiet again, but this time, it wasn't cold. "You guys don't spend Christmas with family?" she asked softly. Steele stared into the fire. "Most of us don't have family anymore," he said finally. "Some walked away. Some, we drove away. So, yeah, we just spend it here." Mara nodded slowly. "Sometimes, when you lose too much, you stop believing there's anything left to come back to," she said. "But you never know. Sometimes life surprises you when you least expect it." Steele didn't reply, but those words stayed with him long after she went to bed the next morning. The snow had stopped, and sunlight spilled across the mountains. Lucy woke first, running into the main room where the men were still half asleep. "Merry Christmas," she shouted, her voice echoing like a bell through the cold air. None of them answered right away. They weren't used to hearing those words. Lucy looked around, puzzled. "Don't you guys do presents?" she asked. Steele swallowed hard. "Nah, kiddo. We don't really do that anymore." Lucy frowned, then ran to her small bag. She pulled out her teddy bear, hugged it tight, and walked over to Steele. "You can have Mr. Buttons," she said seriously. "He makes me feel safe. Maybe he'll make you feel safe too." For a moment, no one breathed. Steele, this man who had seen bar fights, prison walls, and death itself, felt his eyes burn. He took the bear gently, as if it were made of glass. "Thanks, kid," he said softly. "I'll keep him safe." The room was silent again, but now it wasn't empty. One by one, the men started getting up. Someone found old boxes of food in the pantry. Someone else pulled a dusty string of lights from storage. Before long, the clubhouse looked like something it hadn't been in years, a home. They cooked together, laughed together, and for the first time,